It's always a fun time to catch up with Dave Mabry. As we look back with Dave Mabry, we talk a little bit more about Southwest Virginia football. We'll have a lot more of these with one of the encyclopedias of high school football, Dave Mabry, on the Sports Buffet podcast.
In case someone doesn't know, what does it mean when you say fighting numbers?
Fighting numbers, when you're a single A school and you're getting, you have a varsity roster of 24 or 25, which is fairly decent numbers for the size of school that you might be, but it's still you're fighting that number situation where you have an injury here, an injury there. The other thing with us is a lot of times at the small schools, which a lot of people that are at bigger schools don't understand, is if you're a freshman and a good athlete, you're playing varsity.
Yeah.
That's just life on the single A level. You might, in a best case scenario, that might not be the best case scenario for you, but you're playing varsity. Just for the simple fact that numbers wise, that's how what you've got to do to survive.
Well, and not only that, but you talk about it. If you're a freshman, you're playing varsity. You might not be playing your natural position, but if you're a great athlete, you might be the Swiss Army knife to where you have to play wherever the team has a deficiency.
Right. And now you're seeing a lot of schools not having JV programs.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of schools, and the smaller schools have been doing it for a while, been playing at middle school B team format, which is basically Naras actually is. I'm trying to think, what are we doing? What's he'll be coaching? He's coaching those eighth and then ninth graders that aren't up on varsity. So he's coaching eighth and ninth. So that would be a JV team here. But a lot of schools, I know Alta Vista was using, I don't know if they're playing JV now or not, but I know they weren't. They were playing just B team. And then we were having trouble those last few years fielding a JV team.
Speaking of Alta Vista, and back in the day, I know there was no rec program. The Vadens started it back. Was that when you were there?
Yeah. When I got, and I'm not going to go into it in a lot of detail here, but when I got to Alta Vista, I came from Narrows. I'd gotten a call from Dean Hubbard. One of my former players was coaching at William Campbell under H.S. Ingo. When HS was head coach at Campbell. And he had come in and he said, yeah, Campbell County's hiring. And we were looking at my wife at the time we were talking, and, Nares is a nice place. It's a great place. As I sit here on my back deck in the middle of Nares looking at the mountains now.
I was going to say, it would be nice if you're still there.
Yeah. But we felt like we wanted a little bit more options for our kids as far as things to do. And at the time, there was no Walmart in Harrisburg, so you had to drive 40 miles to go buy a pair of shoes and stuff like that. So I put in some applications, and I put one in at Campbell County because Brian Bowles had told me, apply. Campbell County's hiring a lot of people.
Brian Bowles is a former head basketball coach at William Campbell. Also, if I'm not mistaken, is he a Narrows alum?
He's a Narrows alum, and he's now the principal at Narrows High School.
Okay.
And
say hello.
I will. He, but yeah, he had told me about that, and I'd applied, and then I got a call all of a sudden from Dean Hubbard. And, his first statement, I pick up the phone. I get called out of class. Anytime you get called to the office, called out of class, you're like, uh-oh, am I in trouble? And he introduced himself and all this and that. He said, I understand you guys play some good football down there. And, of course, all you got to do is lead me on with a statement like that, and then you can really get me to talking. So, and next thing I know, I interviewed with Dr. Nolly and Joan Woodson, and got there. But when I got there, the Alta Vista football program was just in a bad state of affairs.
Now, let me rewind real quick before we get into that, and I'll remember where we're at. How much did you know about Campbell County football lore before that? Because Mark Lindenberg, who is Norm's son, coached at Brookville for many years before this, I'm assuming.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, he was coach. I think he started in 92, 93.
Somewhere in there.
Yeah, in that range.
And Coach Johnson, was he superintendent? No, he couldn't be if Dr. Nolly was.
Dr. Nolly.
Okay.
Because I remember, when I went in and interviewed with him, he was sitting at his desk smoking, and there was a big no smoking sign, and I was like, huh. But yeah, I mean, when I got there, Alta Vista football program was in a shambles, and I was there 99, 2000, 01, 02, 4 years, and it never really got any better.
I want to say they went independent maybe that third or fourth year.
They went independent when John Wheeler came in. John, much respect for John Wheeler, a good friend of mine, lives here in Ranford now, retired superintendent of Floyd County Schools. And John was trying to do the right things, but he just couldn't get the athletes.
And going independent might have really been it might have really been a helpful step in that too, because you were never probably going to win in the Dogwood district at a consistent level at that time. I know a lot of people were maybe chapped about it, but I think Alta Vista felt like that was probably the best thing. And I agree, because you were playing schools that were more of your ilk, shall we say.
Yeah, in a lot of ways. Yeah, that helped and all that, but there was a lot of, and like I say, I'm not going to go into a whole lot of it. There was a lot of turmoil there. I wasn't very happy. I wasn't very happy with a lot of things that went on. And when John left Alta Vista, I said, I'm done. And I thought I was done with coaching. And I think about a week later, Mike Sharness called me and said, come out to Rustburg. And I was like, shoot, yeah, because Sharness knew me from my time at Naris. We scrimmaged Carroll every year when he was coaching Carroll County, and we always had great scrimmages with them.
And this is way before he came to Liberty, by the way, just to give some timelines.
Carroll County. Here's the other thing about Mike Sharness. I'm bouncing around now, but he was an assistant under Joel Hicks at Pulaski County. Okay. Then he got his first head coaching job, which was at Carroll County. Carroll County, at that point in time, was basically the doormat. They were a traditional doormat. They were one of the bigger schools. They were over 1,000 some students, but it's a very spread out county. Kids having to travel to get to the school and this and that. But
can you compare it to anywhere around here, or is there no comparison?
It's sort of like Amherst.
Okay.
Except Amherst has had a lot of success. Amherst is pretty spread out county.
Right.
Elton County, maybe. Same thing.
But Carroll County's a one-county school.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. And he got them winning seasons, which they had not had winning seasons in 20 plus 30 years, and got them to the playoffs a couple of years.
Let me interrupt again. What district are they in at the time? Do you remember?
New River District.
So who are they playing consistently?
Radford, Blacksburg, Christiansburg. Trying to think who had dropped out at that point.
Well, my point is you didn't have probably a ton of non-district games at that time.
Probably at that time you did.
Okay.
Because what had happened, the New River District originally had 11 teams in it.
Okay.
And for years it had 11 teams. And then slowly, when factories and stuff started closing, you were seeing the drop off. The Galaxes, the Floyds, the George Wyths, all those schools, all those areas were hit hard by, job closures and factories shutting down and this and that. And they started to drop out of the New River and into single A ranks.
Okay. So I'm going to give a little history lesson here, and it's going to blow people's mind. Virginia used to be AAA, AA, single A for the most part.
Right.
So all these schools at this point are AA. Factories
Right.
close, you go to single A.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, these schools, because all these people that were moving in aren't there anymore, so your numbers have dwindled.
Are split districts a thing?
Pardon?
Are split districts a thing at that point?
No.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
I'd never seen a split district until I got to the Dogwood.
Yeah, I was going to say, welcome to the Dogwood.
And then learning about Riverheads' league, which
Right.
the Shenandoah, they were, and they might even had 3 levels in it. But anyway, back to Shawness, and then he goes to Liberty, which was in the same boat. Same boat. So he wasn't scared to go to schools that were challenging.
The smaller school that's with the bigger schools, but they're a smaller school just by the number of class size. Is that safe to say? I mean,
Right,
Liberty's never been a huge school. Liberty's probably one of the smaller AA schools, even back in the day.
right.
Carroll County, I'm taking it same way. Smaller AA school, but they can't go anywhere.
Well, yeah, and it's sad to me. And again, I don't know all the specifics, and so I'm just an outsider speaking on it. But I think it's sad that Liberty has to play in the Seminole.
Yeah, a lot of people have that.
And I'm not saying that as a knock to Liberty. I just don't think it's fair.
Right.
And I know I've heard they've tried to get into the Dogwood and a couple other places. And I just think it's, in the end, it's about kids. It's about the kids. And that's, sometimes I think we all forget that.
You bring up a good point based on that. It's also kind of a little bit about travel. How far was Carroll traveling back in those days, or was everything fairly close?
There'd be, and what you got to understand too, that's a good question, but we had, like when I was at Naris, we were in the Mountain Empire District, and New River when we started, and then we dropped to single A and then went to Mountain Empire. And we would have a trip to Grayson County, and that was usually about 2 hours. And then when I went to Alta Vista, everybody would moan and groan about the trip to Nelson County. And I'm like, this is nothing.
I don't care about Friday night trips as much as I care about Monday through Thursday trips. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but it's a straight 4-lane highway.
Right. No, I get it. But I mean, I think that's where people if Narrows has to go 2.5 hours to play a football game on a Friday, I don't think that's as big of a deal as a Tuesday volleyball game.
Yeah, take that drive to Bath County sometime.
I'd rather not.
I mean, and the thing is, so when you talk about travel, and if you're like in a Seminole district, well, everything's right there. Everything is right in that radius, so there is no real major travel or anything.
I complain about the trip to Liberty.
Yeah, and I reckon it's what you're used to.
Right.
As you get more rural, though, that's what you're going to have.
Right. And I'm not trying to be funny, by the way, but I'm pointing out Liberty might be the furthest trip for somebody, but it's not like it's far. You know what I'm saying? So
Right.
point Mabry, point Alvis on this one because it's a 15-minute trip, so you don't have to. I remember back in the day when the Seminole had, week 1 was a regular season game, week 10 was a regular season game. There were no non-districts. Everything was fairly close. I mean, if JF had to go to William Campbell, maybe that's not the funnest trip in the world, but we don't have to pack the Sports Illustrated, the Encyclopedia, Volume Z, and anything else because it's not that far.
Right.
So I didn't mean to get
Yeah.
on a travel tangent. Go ahead.
But
We're talking about Carroll having to
that
travel.
was some of the battles that Carroll's had, and I mean now Carroll's is playing 3A, 4A, whatever they are. I'm not for sure. And now they've got some trips, and because here in South, in New River and Southwest Virginia, you don't have any AAA schools. You don't have anything above a 2A. I think maybe Abington.
Yeah, talk to Patrick Henry and ask them how that works out for him when it gets to the playoffs.
Yeah, and so you have to, for years with Pulaski County, they had found, they were having trouble, when they started out, they had to play all those Runnock Valley schools and GW Danville, and this was when it was the true 3A system.
Yeah, because I remember, and let me come back to PH real quick. They're playing like 5A, 6A now. So, I mean, when they go to the playoffs, they're playing teams that they've never seen before, and they've never seen them because a Richmond team is
Because
not
there's
going
no
to leave the
schools
area.
yeah, and you can't schedule. It's hard to get, especially with budgets and everything, to schedule a regular season game to even prepare you for those things.
But I remember Pulaski often played. It was either Anacostia or
Anacostia,
Bishop.
DC,
Yeah, they always played a DC team.
the Charlotte
Yep.
Charlotte team that was always one of the best teams, or usually a state champion. North Carolina, they played them a few years. But the thing is, too, when Pulaski was doing that, there was I'm trying to word this nicely.
Well, there was no River Ridge. I can tell you that.
Yeah, but there was money.
Yeah.
Pulaski County had money, and and Joe Hicks was like he was like all the legendary coaches. He was so revered that if he wanted something, he was usually going to get it.
Yeah.
And that's how important at that point in time in Pulaski County football was.
So Sharnis is at Carroll County. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm going to come back to the story at some point.
And that goes back to the old days, New River District days, when it was Dublin High School and Pulaski High School.
Right. Who coached Dublin?
Dave Brown.
Okay.
Dave Brown started coaching Dublin High School in 1959. He was at Blacksburg High School before that, and had some great teams at Dublin. Had the Clarks, the Clark brothers, of which you would know Gary Clark.
Yeah. If you don't know Gary Clark, watch NFL films.
Yeah. Had the Clarks and the Cardins at quarterback and all that. He just had the misfortune of having some of his best teams when Norm Lindenberg had two of the best Radford High School teams ever. And that 72 Radford team is often talked about as one of the best ever in the state of Virginia, ever.
Was Todd Grantham a Dublin guy or a Pulaski guy?
I'm not for sure where Todd lived, but he's definitely Pulaski County.
Okay.
Yeah, he's on, and Todd's a big, he's at Alabama Birmingham now.
Right. When did Dublin cease operations thereabouts?
73 was the last year for Dublin and Pulaski. Jim Hickam was the coach at Pulaski,
okay,
and Dave Brown was the coach at Dublin.
Jim Hickam, legendary coach at Northside, if you don't know, by the way.
Yes, and Jim Hickam went on to Northside, as you said, and then in 74, Pulaski County started. And they were in the I think it was called the Western District at the time, maybe.
Yeah, because it was Pula. I want to say the Western District, if I'm not mistaken. At least when young Bob started watching Friday Football Extra in the '80s and whatnot. What was it, Western or Western Valley?
I probably was Western Valley later, but I think early on, I think in the 70s, mid 70s, I think it was just the Western.
Now, at that point, and I'm going to be ignorant here for a minute, was Salem at that point, or was Salem still Andrew Lewis?
Salem in 74 was Andrew Lewis. I think I think Salem started in 79.
AAA back then, or no?
I think so. I'm not for sure. I'm not 100% for sure.
Dave's on this
Um,
deck. I'm sitting on my bed. We're not looking at history books right now in front of us, people.
yeah,
Just want to help.
yeah.
So, and Andrew Lewis, a big deal.
Andrew Lewis, a big deal. Oh Lord, uh, the 70s under Eddie Joyce with his son at quarterback in 70. What was it? 71. And they played in the state semifinal game that they played at Victory Stadium against TC Williams, as in remember the Titans, TC Williams. That was a pretty big deal, and they were solid. It's a very, very solid history for that group. Yes.
When did Salem become the big deal?
Uh, with Willis White,
Right,
and
because he
I'm
was at
not
PH before, if I'm
exactly
not mistaken.
yeah, and I'm not for sure exactly what year he came to Salem, but when Willis White got there. And, little known before that, Willis was a coach at Fort Chiswell High School for a while.
Now, at that, when does, and because I don't want to hold you to exact years, but Andrew Lewis at some point becomes a straight middle school, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Talking to Dave Mabry. He's got a better view on his deck. I keep moving around my one room apartment. So I'm looking at a mirror. He's looking at the mountains. And I don't like what I see in the mirror, by the way. He probably likes what he sees in the mountains more than what I see in the mirror.
It's
Um,
just it's just called options, Bob. I've got an option to not look at the mirror. So
yeah. Well, I should probably take that one from me. So, gosh, I don't even remember where we were at now. So Mike Sharness gives you a call and says, "Come on to Rustburg."
right, and um, it was just coming in with that staff and seeing how things worked, and it was a different way. It was just very different because it was a lot more, like I said, a lot more organized. Plus, I'd not played teams on that level, on that upper level schools that size before. I'd not coached against that, so it was a big eye opener for me on that level. Just to see, when you go out against the Heritages and the Jefferson Forest at the time, and at this point in time, they were what they were, and and you're seeing that, and it was it was a good time. We were 6-4, 5. We turned in. We didn't have a losing season. I think we had a 5-5 and a couple 6-4s or something like that.
Now,
Years I was.
my mom is from Rustburg, so in no way do I mean to belittle Rustburg when I say this. It's not like you can just walk through the school and have a pick either. You're still kind of fighting numbers to a degree at a Rustburg.
Yes. Well, what you got to understand is it's inner city, city outskirts, and then you've got Rustburg, which is a lot more rural than what people realize. And you've got that little bit of that travel thing, getting them to the school, this and that. And the rest, no, I'm not going to say that, but anyway, Rustburg's always fighting a little bit of a battle,
Right.
because they are a little bit different than the other schools.
And I got to
Uh,
imagine the line is probably close to some people could go to Rustburg, some people could go to Appomattox.
Probably.
Yeah. Because I can't think of another line that Rustburg's really fighting. Maybe. Well, I don't think Evington's really even in that fight. That's more of an Alta Vista fight. But
Yeah,
yeah,
and their other fight would be probably with William Campbell.
yeah. And I mean, they're
But
fighting numbers too.
William Campbell's going to lose that battle most of the time.
Yep. So let's talk a little bit about Three Rings football. I'm going to call it, you correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of it I will say is probably old game film type of things.
95% of it, yes.
Okay. What have you learned?
Um, well, one thing I've learned that I've actually enjoyed it, because it was not what it turned into is not what it was intended to be. What happened when I moved back here, Kelly Lowe, who was the coach at Nares High School and athletic director and my quarterback back in the early 90s, he was taking me through the locker room, and he opened up one of the doors to one of the closets, and he said, "Look at this." And I looked, and all I saw was canisters of 16 millimeter film. And I looked at it closer, and I'm seeing Narrows games 1960, 1961, 1962. And I'm like, holy crap. Because for this area, the New River District started in 1960. Okay. The first 3 years of the New River District, Narrows dominated. Narrows did not lose a game in 3 years. And they were running single wing under Harry Ragsdale. And I said, what are you going to do with this stuff? And he said, we don't know what to do with it. And I looked at Kelly and I just said, well, it's mine. I said, it has now become my property. And he said, do with what you need. And I started taking those 60s games, and I'd sent off probably 15 or so games. And it's this old 16 millimeter canisters. And they came back just crystal clear, just very clear film, running single wing. And I mean, good legendary Nares teams coached by one of the most legendary coaches ever, and I'm looking at it and I'm saying, this is great. So I started doing more Nares stuff, and I had like a ton. There was a ton of them. Well, then all of a sudden, I was talking to Zach Leonard, who is the head football coach at Blacksburg High School. And he said, Coach Christ, when he was here, kept a great library. He said, why don't you come look at our stuff?
And just to interrupt, Dave Christ is a legend. He's been there forever too.
Yes. And you talk about good guys. We were talking about Winfred and Sharness being good guys. Dave Christ is right up there. He again, he doesn't fit that mold that you would think of that head guy. He's just very, very outwardly nice, and has helped out a lot of young assistants over the years, and just a very good man. But anyway, he had a ton, and I'm sitting there thinking about, okay, Blacksburg, and he had games he didn't have much 60 stuff, but he had the 70s. And they had early 70s. They had the Sidney Snell years. And I don't know if you're familiar with Sidney Snell, but Sidney Snell's probably the greatest athlete to come out of the New River District. Played at Virginia Tech. Was a wingback at Virginia Tech. Did a lot of big things at Tech. Was a all everything basketball player for 4 years at Blacksburg High School, and football player. But I'm able to get all this stuff, and I played against Sidney, and I was friends with Sidney growing up. He was at Blacksburg, I was at Christiansburg, and a lot of us, we ran together and did a lot of things together and stuff. But to be able to get that stuff, well, then Dave Chris' son, Mikey, calls me. Mikey's the head coach at Radford High School. He said, "Hey," he said, "we've got this library back here." He said, "You think you can do something with that?" And I said, "Oh, Lord." So it just got, and the rabbit hole just got bigger and bigger. And once I started doing them, then I went to Giles. Jeff Williams, who I coached with forever, was the coach at Giles at the time. And I got a bunch of stuff, and I noticed there was some stuff missing, and I called Steve Ragsdale. And Steve had some film, plus he had some older film of his dad's games.
And we're really into a who's who, by the way, of Southwest Virginia. I mean, obviously we're missing some, but you've got Ragsdale, you've got Lindenberg, you've got Christ. These are three really big name coaches.
And coach in that same group, Christiansburg stuff, Phil Robbins.
Yeah.
And this is what the New River District had back then, and during those times. And so anyway, the rabbit hole, it just got bigger and bigger. And I'm like, okay, I'd like to get some Galax stuff. And so I got in contact with them, and I got some of that. I was able to get a bunch of old Dublin High School and Pulaski High School games.
It's a
Dave
miracle
Brown.
all this is still around, in my opinion. Miracle.
Yeah. And I was able to get a lot of that. And then just recently I met with, I know Floyd's head coach, Timmy Cromer, who was coaching at Christiansburg forever. I've known Timmy since he was playing Little League in Christiansburg. Timmy's the head coach at Floyd, but one of his assistants called me up and said, "Hey, do you want some of our stuff?" And he had Winfred's big state years, which was the early 2000s. And I'm like, well, I can't do a history of the New River if I don't put in, Winfred's big stuff. So I started putting that stuff in. And, and it's just, it's blown up. I went from, I think I got, 1,400 subscribers now and all that, which, you stop and think it's just a local thing.
Right.
It's not a national thing that's going to get 10 million. People say, "Oh, you can make money off that." No, you can't. And I wouldn't want to anyway. But
wait, you left out one thing, unless you're going to get to it, because where did you coach later on that had an NFL guy?
where did I coach?
Alta Vista.
Oh, yeah.
On Thornhill.
Oh, yeah. And definitely there's Alta Vista and Juan Thornhill on 3 Rings football. Yeah. Oh, yes. I've got, the teams I coached are in there. I'm mixing them in. I'll mix in a game from the 60s with a 2013. I put up some Navy Jones clips the other day, and that's what I like to do too. I watch a game and I will clip stuff.
Right.
And I'll clip, like, Navy Jones has an 80-yard run against Nelson County. And of course, every time they see a Navy Jones clip, they're saying, "That's not Navy Jones. He played at Jefferson Forest." And I said, "Well, he has a ring that says Alta Vista on it." So, but yeah, I try and mix all that stuff in. And what I started doing too is I subscribed to newspaper archives.
Right.
And so when I post a game, in the description, I will copy and paste the newspaper article from the game with the stats, and I give credit. I copy everything, like who wrote it, what paper it came from, and all that. And that's one of the things too I've heard you talk about over the years, your respect for Robert Anderson and his sports writers. That I have a ton of respect for just so many of the writers over the years, writers that I worked with, or that, when I was coaching that came, and then, even when I was a little kid in the 60s, Newton Spencer, who wrote for the Roanoke Times, and then Dave Bissett for the Radford News Journal, and all the way up through Ray Cox, Jack Bogachak, Bob Teitelbaum, Dan Callahan. Just a lot of great writers. Damian Sordelet, who covered us at Alta Vista, he was our beat guy for our state years and all that. And now he's the tech beat guy.
You have
Now,
over 1,000 subscribers, in case you didn't say that.
I think I got,
Yeah.
yeah.
Pretty impressive.
But yeah, and so I started, I would get the articles and put the articles with it and everything. And I try and put stuff up usually on Friday mornings is when I'd usually put new stuff up, and I'll put about 10 to 12 new things up a week. And if I get low on games, and I've still got tons of canisters of film in my closet that I haven't sent off yet because that does cost money. But if I get low on games, I'll put more clips.
Right.
And I can take a game, like I said, I can get the clips of the Sydney Snells or the Leon Kings or the stars, the Juan Thornhills and Navy Joneses, and even the people we played, and get stuff like that and put a clip up, and you can get it's really wild, the number of hits you will get on a 20-second clip.
Well, and the other cool thing is I'm actually on the site right now, and in case anybody hasn't been to it, go to youtube.com / Mabry Family 4123, or you can just type in Three Rings Football in your YouTube search there. It's going to bring it all up. You also have playlists.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
I try and break it down by schools.
Right. Or by year. Yeah.
Or by decades, I think I do. And then I'll do it teams I coached. A little bit of everything in there. But that'll make it easy because, like, if Radford High School can go on there and they can sit there and they can find their playlist. And then I even broke it down even more to where if you want Radford 71, 72, which were those two super teams, they can go to that file. Giles 1980 team, that was Steve Ragsdale's Leon King team with all that. And then I put, like, when Ragsdale does interviews on some of the shows, so I'm sort of affiliated with Big Dog Sports.
Yep. Rick Watson.
And Rick Watson, and he does a monthly where he gets Steve Ragsdale and Marty Smith together because Steve coached Marty, and I coached against Marty and all them, And I will say this: in all my years of football, I don't think the Giles Naras spectacle over the years has been it's a sight to behold.
Speaking of Marty Smith is he's, in my opinion, cut his teeth by being a writer. Now you could say he's a video documentarian sometimes or whatever you want. But
he's a person. He's an entertainment personality.
Right. Well, guess what?
Who is a journalist.
Most all writers are going to have to go to that way of being a personality because the days of just being a writer or journalist are getting to be few and far between. But I wasn't trying to knock Marty Smith, by the way. But Marty Smith actually worked in Lynchburg at the News and Advance for a spell.
Oh, yeah. And he did some stuff with the Roanoke Times.
He's very entertaining. He's very good. He's very entertaining. He's been on podcasts that I've seen, too, outside of Rick. I saw him on Dale Jr.'s because I think Marty was one of the first people around when Dale Sr. died at Daytona. So Marty's got great information in my eyes. Marty also did a forward to a book, if I'm not mistaken, by Jeremy Haymore.
Yes.
Does Dave Mabry ever think about going the book route?
No, I don't have. I tried to write, but I don't have the patience. What people need to understand about the Bandana Express book that Jeremy wrote, that took him 15 years.
Yeah.
And it took him 15 years because he did it the right way. And have you read it?
I have. I've got a copy of it too.
It is an incredible read. when he was doing it, he had sent me a copy of the first chapter and just asked me what I thought. And he's, when he's talking about Harry Ragsdale and he's talking about Narrows and, all that. And, in his way he describes the fall, all that, it's just incredible. Jeremy's got a talent, and that's, I don't know how the book as a whole is doing sale-wise. I know it's critically, it's doing very well.
Well, anything that is going to be done, or anything that you are going to do, and you know me, I will give you the straight, honest truth, but I never mean to insult you or give you too much love, is obviously people that are there, lived it, and have the fandom are going to have much more of a care than somebody from
Oh yeah.
Wyoming who doesn't, know
Exactly.
anything. Now, if they lived in Giles and moved to Wyoming, maybe that's a little bit different, but you get where I'm going.
Yeah. But, if you look at a lot of things like that, you never know when something like that might take off.
Sure.
Just like the whole T.C. Williams story.
Well,
It's the same thing.
and the thing about Haymore, too, writing the book, I didn't mean to interrupt you. This will work much better when I get to come sit on the deck with you, by the way. But when you write about the single wing, there are enough single wingers out there that are kind of spread out across the country, too, to where I think an offense can catch, or, something like that can catch more of can go, quote unquote, viral, as the kids say, more than, the team that people, like I said, from Western America probably aren't going to know. You know what I'm saying? And I mean that respectfully.
Yeah. But, and when you talk about, and again, this is sort of off the thing, but when you talk about the single wing in America, the guru that everybody calls all over America when they want to put in the single wing lives about 5.5 miles up the road from me. And that would be Mr. Steve Ragsdale. That's the guy everybody calls. And he's done that. I had him come down in 2008 when Dave Tabner was the coach at Hargrave Military. He had come to me. I was at the Y lifting, and he had come to me, and he had said, I understand you have some background in single wing. I said, we played against it every year, and we, how we defended it and this and that and everything, but I know how it works, and it's an amazing offense to watch and everything. And he said, I've got a situation where I think I want to run it. And I said, it's not a 1 year fix.
Or a 1 week fix, especially.
Yeah. I said, it's got to be a commitment. It's got to be a program commitment. I said, you can't just put it in for a year and go. And he asked if I would come in. And this was the summer of 2008. So I was at Alta Vista with Sharnus and them. And I went up and I helped him. And I said, why don't I call this guy I know? And so I called Steve. And I put Steve, and I gave, and I told him, I said, talk to Tabner and everything. And the next thing I know, Steve's coming up to Hargrave, and we're all meeting, helping them, put it in. And Steve came with notebooks and had books for all their assistant coaches explaining the offense and everything. And it's just, and to sit in a room with Steve Ragsdale when he gets on a roll on this stuff is an incredible thing to see.